Hey there everyone, welcome back to The Disconnected. My name is Ryan and tonight we are going to be getting into our first guide, which is going to be how to collect everything Scream Factory. I've been teasing this for a couple of weeks on our social media pages, and Scream Factory has been a label that I've collected for quite some time, and I think they are the perfect ones for us to talk about first together. So what we're going to do is we're going to go into the different types of releases they have, some of the history behind the label, some of the, quote, scandals that they've been through, and some tips and tricks for collecting them in a way that will not break your bank. So let's get right into it. Scream Factory is a sublabel of Shout Factory, and for years they've been releasing things like TV seasons on DVDs, some old music compilations. They were heavily involved in Mystery Science Theater 3000, and they still are. They're actively promoting it as of today, even. And in June of 2012, they officially announced what would become known as Scream Factory. They announced their first couple of releases, which would be coming out in September of 2012, and those were Halloween 2 and Halloween 3 collector's editions. So with that signifier known as collector's editions, let's get into the different types of releases that they've been putting out. So the first one that I just mentioned is the collector's edition. You'll see that moniker at the top of their collector's editions on the slipcovers. Slipcovers are guaranteed to come with all collector's editions releases for the first 3 months from any retailer. They are guaranteed to come if you order from Amazon, from Scream Factory Direct, from Target, from any of your brick and mortar stores in person like FYE, or if you're lucky enough to have a book off by you, or even something like a vintage stock. Many of these brick and mortar stores will get these collector's editions on the day of release, but we will get into the retail strategies for purchasing Scream Factory later on in the video. For now, if you purchase these collector's editions from shoutfactory.com, not only will you be getting the slipcover as seen here, but you will also be getting a poster just like this one that will come from shoutfactory.com with this title, and they generally will attempt to send these out if they get them before the release date so that you will get them early. A couple of years ago, they made a change where they are putting the sticker on the outside of the tube, and I absolutely love this little detail. They make it easy so that you can store these, and then when you are looking to hang one, you can easily find it by looking at the sticker. It is rather nice to see the artwork that way. So that was collector's editions. The next type that we're going to talk about is a standard edition. The standard edition is going to look like this. It is in a regular Blu-ray case. You'll see the Scream Factory logo on the spine there. And the big question here is, what is the difference between a collector's edition and a standard edition? The two main differences here are the collector's editions will always have a slipcover upon release. The standard editions usually will not, the vast majority of the time. The other main thing is that there's a lot more care put into these collector's editions releases. If there is a newer scan available, they will put those on these collector's editions releases. A lot of these older standard releases, they are not able to license a new scan, so they are only given the currently available high-def transfer from whoever holds the rights and that they are licensing them from. They generally will do the best that they can, whether it's a collector's edition or a standard edition, but again, that's up to the rights holder what they're allowed to do for their releases. So many of the collector's editions releases, they try to put new special features on there, whether that's interviews with the cast or the crew on the film or filming locations or something like that. It's something that they can put on there that are supplemental to add to the package to make it worth a collector's edition, basically. The next type of title that they released under Scream Factory is an association that they made starting in 2015 with the Independent Film Channel, and that is through their line of IFC Midnight releases. Here's an example of one. This just recently came out. You'll see that it has the IFC Midnight logo at the top and the Scream Factory logo at the bottom. This one happens to have a slipcover. They do not all have slipcovers. Here's another example of an IFC Midnight release. This one does not have a slipcover and never had one upon release. The sad part here, there is no rhyme or reason on what gets a slipcover on the IFC Midnight releases. They tend to be sporadic on how they're releasing those with the slipcovers or not, and they have never announced a way that they are sharing that there's a slipcover on those. The best way for you to find out, though, is to go on the website blue-ray.com and look at the original release packaging, and it will show you then if it had a slipcover upon release or not. The next type of release that Scream Factory has is one of my favorites, and that is their box sets. So we have two examples of them on the table right now, but let's go with this one for now. The Critters box set. This collection has all of the movies that had come out up to the point when this was released, and this is different from their original box sets because, as you can hear, this is a very sturdy box. A lot of their first box sets came in what was essentially just extremely thin cardboard that was basically a paper sleeve. It was extremely fragile, and many of them were damaged just being shipped from the retailer, whether that was Scream Factory Direct. You know, maybe it was in one of those giant boxes from Amazon with just a single air pillow, and as it rattled around in the mail as it comes to you, those corners get banged up, the edges of it just fall apart. An example of one of these that was always damaged that you can see if you're looking at some of these listings on eBay is the original Amityville Horror Trilogy. So now that box set is out of print and is going for a lot of money, but many of those, they are dinged up to all hell, and it is not something that they should have been doing. So I'm glad that they were able to make the change to this hard type of box. The other box set that you'll see on the table is this Halloween Complete Collection 15-disc Deluxe Edition. At the time when this came out, this was all of the films that had been released, and that is extremely sought after now. As you can see by some of these sold listings on eBay, this thing has gone for well over $500 multiple times. There's even been some listings that have sold at over $800 in the past. It is getting ridiculous out there to find this set. So the next type of release to discuss from Scream Factory is the Steelbooks. So this is a recently released Steelbook for the Slumber Party Massacre. This came with a new 4K scan that was the updated version of the scan that I just showed you a minute ago in the standard release. And these Steelbooks come with generally a quote on the inside and some nice art on the disc. This Steelbook actually came with that poster that I showed you a couple minutes ago, and the package that it came with also had this NECA figure. This is the villain from the Slumber Party Massacre, and as you can see, the box is set up, and it does have the Scream Factory logo on the bottom there. And NECA is another partnership that Scream Factory has. They've had a handful of releases that have included NECA figures. One of the most sought after ones recently is from Night of the Creeps. They have the Tom Atkins character. That one's going for a lot of money on eBay now. Another one that is shooting up there in value is the Angela from Night of the Demons NECA figure. That one is recently selling for $300 to $400 on eBay. And those are sold listings. That's not what they're listed for. They are sold at that much money. So I may never have one of those. Another partnership that they've had, let's talk about their partnership with Sacred Bones. So this is a record company. So inside this box is actually a 7-inch record that came with the new 4K edition of They Live. And this is what that record looks like on the inside of this box. It does have more artwork on the back of that sleeve. And the record itself is a pink record with the logo on the vinyl there, as you can see. And this thing, oddly enough, was a large package. They also had a NECA figure that came out with this, but they've only had, as far as I'm aware, 3 releases come from Sacred Bones, and I would love to see them do some more of these. They've done these for 3 of the John Carpenter releases that they've put out so far. So the next one to talk about is another John Carpenter release. This is the 4K Ultra HD release of The Prince of Darkness. You'll see the Ultra HD logo on the top of that spine with the Scream Factory logo at the bottom. This is a shared scan from the Studio Canal copy that was created and released in the UK. we can likely assume that the license they acquired contains all of the same rights that they had for the Studio Canal releases in the UK, which means they are probably going to be releasing The Fog in 4K Ultra HD and then Escape from New York in 4K. I cannot wait to see those discs. I do have the limited edition Studio Canal releases, and all I can say is the coloring on there is amazing. You guys will love them if you have not seen them. The next one I want to talk about is another collector's edition type. For example, this is Carrie, but on some of these, they released them with alternative slipcovers. So this is new art that is different from the art that they had on the regular slipcover. There is nothing really special here, just a second slipcover. They did this for a handful of releases, and some of them are very difficult to acquire now. Some of them, like the alternate slipcover for The Return of the Living Dead, is nearly impossible to find on eBay. And one of the reasons I brought this one out is because The Return of the Living Dead is now out of print completely. They are not manufacturing any more of those, and that is a good time to start discussing the way that you can buy these on the secondary market. So this release is now being sold in some in-store prices. We've seen these at vintage stocks in the Midwest for $80 brand new and sealed, which is ridiculous. However, it is an out-of-print title, and if somebody is going to be a completionist about it, they're going to have to fork over a lot of money to find it in the secondary market. Now, if you want to be a stickler, you can set up alerts on Mercari, eBay, Facebook groups, and try to find somebody that possibly just doesn't know what they have and what they're going to be selling. And it's going to take some time, but you might be able to find yourself a good deal. So these are some Facebook groups that you can join to buy and sell in. I'm a part of these, and as you can see, some of them are dedicated to Scream Factory only. Some of them are dedicated to more just boutique Blu-ray type collecting. I would suggest a couple things. One is find a seller that has some previous buyers that can vouch for them. And second, make sure that you are using PayPal goods and services always, unless it is somebody that you've bought from before or somebody that you trust, something like that. Through PayPal, you always have recourse if something happens and you don't get the item that you paid for. There are some other titles that are going big on the secondary market, and that brings us to the last type of Scream Factory release I would like to discuss, and that is Scream Factory site exclusives. So this is an example of one. So this is Message from Space. You'll see that it is a standard release. There is no slipcover. You'll see the Scream Factory logo there on the side. The difference is they only sold this release on shoutfactory.com. It was never sold to any retailers. It was never available on Amazon. It was never, at Target. You couldn't walk into vintage stock and find one of these unless somebody brought it in and traded it in first. They are extremely rare because on the website they were limited to only 1,000 copies. Now that is a very low number, and when you look at the grand scheme of things, how many people are collecting nowadays, they are going out of print very quickly. And that brings us to this title. This title is Deathstalker and Deathstalker 2. This is the only one of the limited releases that Scream Factory, they announced and released 1,000 of these, and then at a later date, they released another 1,000 of them. None of the other site exclusives have had that happen, and there have been quite a few. And on these site exclusives, I would suggest jumping on them pretty much immediately. The ones that were announced in March of 2021, they sold out literally within the week. One last thing about these site exclusives is that the last couple times they've announced these and they've put them on sale, they are unfortunately listing these immediately available, and they are being sold where each individual can purchase 5 copies of them. Now, all that does to me is promote scalping, and it is already happening. Like I mentioned earlier, the titles for March have they sold out within a week, and later that week you were finding them on eBay for 3 and 4 times the cost that they were on the day of the announcement. So it's just not worth it to let them go and let scalpers find it. Go on there, buy yourself a copy if you're going to want it. you don't want to deal with FOMO later and shoot yourself in the foot when you're paying $120 for something that was 26 bucks. All right, I'm going to do a run through of shoutfactory.com/shop. You're going to click on the Scream Factory logo in the top left, and after it loads, you're going to see the whole collection for Scream Factory only. So you have new releases at the top, followed by some themed items like John Carpenter. Here are the shoutfactory.com exclusives and some of the ones that come with merch or vinyl. Below that, there's some other themes like slashers and bestsellers and Hammer films, and then the rest of their collection is all listed below. But on shoutfactory.com, they have this section dedicated to going out of print titles. If you click on View All, it will load, and unfortunately, it's listed with all of the Shout Factory titles that are not just Scream Factory, but here below all of the Shout Factory titles, there's a lot of Scream Factory titles that have gone out of print. If they are still currently in print through Shout Factory, you can buy them at the top, and generally they will still be fairly inexpensive. But some of these ones at the bottom, they are recently out of print, and Shout Factory will not be selling any more of them. If you want, you can look other places like Amazon or eBay or the private sellers that I've listed previously in the video, but you may not be able to find these for a cheap rate anymore. And that's about all I have for Scream Factory, so if you'd like, please give a like below and subscribe if you want to see more like this. I've got more label videos coming out soon. Thanks for watching. Have a good night. So for a while we've been talking about a first... What the fuck?